Hi, Isaac.
Hello.
Uh, Thank you very much for agreeing to talk to me.
Mhm.
Um, we've met in MIC a couple of times during the
Right.
last year, and
Mhm.
what I remember is that you're from the south of Scotland
Mhm.
and you were studying in York,
Yes.
and you studied quite a lot of Japanese
Mhm.
before coming to Japan.
Mm.
And right now, you're back in England.
Yes.
No, you're back in Scotland.
Yes.
Uh, and tell me where you are again.
I'm in Prestwick, which is an airport town in the west coast of Scotland.
Wow, I've never flown from Prestwick.
Mm.
Did you fly back to there?
No, I landed at London and then we drove up, stopping halfway through.
Yeah. And how are you now?
In terms of jet lag, or
Yeah, I think so. Jet lag is always a thing.
adjusting. I'm doing quite well. I tried to adjust it before leaving Japan. Um, to how much avail, I suppose, is the question.
What's your tip for adjusting to jet lag before leaving?
Um, you can try and figure out the time where it is where you want to be, and then adjust your sleep beforehand. So you can try staying up later or waking up earlier, which is uncomfortable when the sun doesn't agree with you, but the sun will agree with you when you arrive.
And did you do that this time?
I tried to. I tried to. Um, I tried to wake up earlier and go to sleep a bit later.
Mm. Thank you. Well, I think I'm going to ask you my two questions here, and then I'll put the PowerPoint off so that we can see each other. Uh,
Mhm.
so, how about the Japan experience? Have you enjoyed living in Japan, and what cultural differences struck you uh, when you were in Japan?
Well, firstly, I did enjoy Japan. Um, it's a very interesting experience for me personally. I suppose if you've lived in Japan your whole life, you won't know any different and will think it's quite dull or usual. But for me, it was anything but usual. Um, and the cultural differences between the UK, something that's different. Um, People are very friendly. And there's an extreme sense of trust, which I don't think is so much there in the UK, or anywhere really, where you could leave your laptop out and someone wouldn't steal it, which is absurd to me. Um, the food culture is different. The sort of stuff you put in your foods are different. Um,
Was there anything you really liked in the food culture?
yes, I mean Japanese food is nice. And I have learned a few things that I'd like to bring back home and show my own family. Uh, Obviously, there are some times where I might miss specific things about food from the UK, but uh, the difference is interesting to see and to taste, I suppose, in this example.
Will you be making anything like making sushi or making nabe or something?
Yeah, I'll try to. I'll try and look up the recipes of some of the things I tried back in Japan and enjoyed, and hopefully um, allow my family to experience somewhat what I what I had when I was there.
Is this your home? You're outside your house now?
Yes, yes, I'm outside my house right
Oh,
now.
wow, that's exciting. I can sort of feel it feels a bit colder because we're 30 degrees at the moment.
Yeah, it's not 30 degrees. Yeah. That's something that shocked me as well. I didn't expect to have that experience coming back where the temperature, even though my parents were like, "Oh, it's so hot," it's 17 degrees or something. Um, that's not very hot from Miyazaki's standpoint.
So you've acclimatized back this way a
Hmm.
little bit. Mm. Let's think about British culture. I'm going to share my screen and have a look at my next question. Oh, oh, what did you miss? Oh, sorry, let's whiz back again. What did you miss about Britain, if anything, when you were in Japan? What have you missed?
Um, I think I missed um well, from a language standpoint, I kind of miss being able to communicate with everyone, and more freely, sort of exchange of information. Um, although this is a bit very British, I did kind of miss small talk. I don't think that's a very Japanese thing to just say like, "Oh, the weather is very this or that or the other thing," um, which is quite a nice thing to do, I think. Um, and I suppose because I wasn't very good at Japanese, it would have been nice to just say about the weather or something so that I'd have something to talk about, something easy to talk about. Uh,
You mean with
something
strangers? With strangers?
hmm?
You mean small
With
talk with
strangers, yeah,
strangers?
yeah, yeah, waiting for a bus or something like that.
Mm. What else?
Um, to a degree, I kind of missed the architecture. I mean, I study at York and I've lived in Glasgow, and both of them have big sort of Romany kind of columns and very pretty tall buildings. Which, uh, although there are tall buildings in cities, it's not. It's just a skyscraper kind of thing. It's modern buildings. It's not a lot of old um, Roman structures. Although Japan does have old buildings, it's just a different style.
Really interesting. I find that I often go to the center of Osaka, to the city hall and stuff, because when I see those big kind of 19th century buildings, I feel I kind of at home. So those parts with the big 19th century stone buildings, I kind of seek them out. And some of the big cities have, but maybe Kyushu doesn't have so much of
Mm.
that 19th century heritage. Um, yeah. So let's move and think about British culture and English culture and Scottish culture. I'm trying to screen share again in my Zoom. Whoops. Does it make sense to talk about British culture, or do you think it makes more sense to talk about Scottish, English, Irish, and Welsh culture um, separately?
Um, I think I guess I'll say it from both standpoints. It does make sense to talk about British culture as a whole because, to a degree, we are just one people. We all have a common language and a very simple, similar set of ideals, and how we structure our society. We're all come from a Christian background. We have a shared history where, whenever Britain was in a war, I mean, all of us were kind of thing. Um,
War,
war, yeah.
yeah, interesting.
Um, and so yeah, I think we share a history to a degree, and that can't be um, taken away. But from the other standpoint, you could say there are sort of smaller microcultures within the UK. Like Wales has their own language, which they speak quite regularly. Um, and I do think to a small degree there is a difference in how people act in the different regions. Even between the south and the north of England, there's a sort of there's smaller cultures within the one big one. Whether that should be a whole, disconnected from British culture, I'm less sure about. I think it's more a culture within a culture.
You noticed differences in York, living in York, compared to your
Mhm.
hometown in Prestwick. What
Yeah,
kind of differences in people's behaviour do you notice?
well, I think Scottish people are a bit gung ho, a bit
Could you
up and
explain
get
gung
up and
ho?
ah
Interesting, isn't it? Because it's a idiom from the empire, I guess. It's like a kind of going for it. Is it going for it?
yeah,
I always say
rough and ready, I
Scottish
guess.
people have got more of a sense of humour.
Um, I suppose so. I think we're a bit louder in general. Maybe a bit more opinionated.
That's really interesting. I'm really surprised. Maybe I'm opinionated because I've got my Scottish granddad.
Maybe.
Mm,
I
yeah.
felt like English people in general were a bit faster and more mm, like single track minded, quite focused. Hours Scottish people are a bit more just I don't know, hoorah. I don't have a very good word for it.
So sort of enjoying life a bit more as well.
I guess, yeah. I guess a Scottish person would be a bit. Obviously, this is a huge generalization, but
Yeah.
if the only thing you knew about one person was Scottish or English or Welsh, and I probably pick the Scottish person for like a party kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about New Year, that's definitely true, isn't it?
Mm.
Um, and I suppose if you think about the drinking reputation, I'd be
Right.
associating drinking with Scotland more, but that's not completely true.
No, it isn't.
You you've grown up in the time when Scotland got its own parliament. Do you remember the time before the parliament and the independence?
No,
That's really
no, not
interesting
really.
because I grew up in Edinburgh before,
Mhm.
and I think there was a real longing for that actually. So
Mm.
I wonder if that's kind of made people a bit more cheerful.
Maybe.
Um, yeah. So we got a bit of generation gap there. I'm going to go back to my question again. Uh, and oh, I'm wondering what you're looking at from. Can you see your
Mm.
road or something from where you are?
No, no, I'm in the garden.
Oh, okay. My goodness, even that is quite exciting for Japanese people because, of course, people get very excited about British gardens, house
Yeah.
gardens. So we might. I'm going to ask you another question, but I might
Mhm.
come back. Uh, so I want to ask you this one. Do you think British culture is changing?
Um, well, if we're talking about popular culture, then I think any culture really changes because of pop music and the sort of slang of each generation, that sort of thing. As a whole, do I think it's changing? Maybe. I think we're very multicultural as a nation, so we do get a lot of cultural influences. Um, so maybe we are changing a little bit to be more multicultural and accepting of sort of all sorts of different perspectives that we might have not been so open to before. That might be my take on is British culture changing?
How do people react when they hear you've been in Japan?
Um, surprised.
Oh wow.
Um, Somebody was just completely confused. They were like, "Why? Why Japan?" I was like, I couldn't tell you. I don't really know.
That's cute. So it's like your destiny.
Something like
Mm.
that.
So it's not just like everybody goes, oh, of course you had to go for the anime and the sushi.
No,
Uh,
no, people don't really think about it. People are more so confused and wondering and surprised.
mm, Interesting. My impression was that Scotland was a bit more multicultural than England in the sense that Scotland had been looking towards Europe and there was like the old alliance.
Yeah,
And
yeah, we do have
a
a
lot
lot
of
of
the
European.
London people were just like, oh, we are the top. And so it was really, really surprising for me to find that we weren't the top. Might be Paris, or it might be Edinburgh, or it might be Milan, and
Mhm.
that was quite freeing for me, I think.
Mm.
Uh, anyway, that's me putting my words in your mouth a bit. Let's see what else we've got there. Apart from is British culture changing?
Mm.
Oh, so I was very curious about this. I will just tell for the benefit of the audience. Here we've
Mhm.
got Rabbie Burns, who is the
Mhm.
national poet, and we've got a picture of an interesting food, which I'm going to ask Isaac to tell us about. Uh,
Mhm.
it's going to be a few months from now, in January, on January the 25th. Do you think you'll celebrate next year?
Yeah, Japan was the first year I didn't celebrate it with my family, which in some ways was more impactful than Christmas, weirdly. Because I don't know, but so Burns Night and Burns the guy, he was a poet, considered the national poet of Scotland. Um, he writes in Scots, which is a sort of cultural language, a bit of an offshoot of Old English. Um, and the haggis, which was the photo next to him, is uh, it's like a big bag of sort of meat, which has some whatever spices you want on it. I think it kind of differs for each one. Some spices, and you might have it with gravy, or you might have it usually with neeps and tatties, which is turnips and potatoes. And you'd sort of there's a certain poem you say to herald it out.
Poem. So you say a poem
Yes,
to the meat.
yes.
Do you know the origin of that? I
It's a
have.
Burns poem.
It's.
It's a Burns poem.
But do you think Burns actually said it? There must have been this original party at which Burns actually
Yes. So.
talked to a haggis because the poem is written saying it's like saying hello steak, isn't it? Or
Yes.
I don't know, hello mochi or something like that.
Mhm.
I was thinking about the beginning of it because I certainly heard, and my good friend from college is somebody who celebrated Burns Night, and I think I've celebrated it when I stayed with a family. My family were only a little bit Scottish, but I did a homestay when I was at high school, and I think they did actually do the proper reading the poem, which is quite long, isn't it? It's 5 minutes or more than 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's around that. I used to know all, but I couldn't recite it for you now.
It's quite about the equality of people, isn't it? Burns was quite a believer
Mhm.
in equality of different people.
Mhm.
I think maybe because I remember a man's a man for all that, or sort of brotherhood and sisterhood and
Right.
this kind of idea, which is a very kind of attractive idea as well, I think.
Mhm.
Um, so I hope you'll have a happy Burns night 6 months from now.
Thank you.
In the meantime,
Mhm.
um, what? Let's pause for a moment.
See,
So we're
I don't
going
have
to
much
take a
conceal.
look. Please talk us through the garden.
Well, this is the back garden. We have a front garden as well, which is probably a little bit nicer. But we're currently just doing this up. We just moved in less than a year ago. This is going to be peas, I believe, or tomatoes rather. So this sort of
Vegetable.
planter is going to be tomatoes. My dad likes growing vegetables, so we often have, potatoes from the garden. We've got a shed and a tap, nice wall surrounding it.
Great. It looks like a real British garden. And you've got a
Yeah,
real British, Scottish grey sky there as well.
yes.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm gonna call it a day
Okay.
for now. But thank you very, very much for giving me
Yeah,
the
no problem.
time. And
Mhm.
I hope that you'll have a good, soft landing. Actually,
Yeah.
I'm gonna pause the video, or stop the video, but I actually want to know more about your plans. Know the old
Okay.
me. Okay, so I will officially thank you and end the recording bit now.
Okay.